Hey guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So previously, I was giving you a tour of Flare magazine. Again, they are open until about March, I recall. Yeah, for that contest they're running, and then they're going to open back up in April for Flare magazine. So do circle back to that again. They focus on poets with disabilities, chronic illness, and yeah, it's a really cool publication, and they just started up back in 2025 again. So do listen back to that episode. So for this one, I will be covering the first line. Yeah, the first line literary journal. Now, I came across this in a different manner. I was, of course, I mentioned this podcast, right? Searching for additional work opportunities and things of that nature, right? And yeah, and I was thinking about, are there any lit mags and journals out there that have ever covered, right, work poetry, right? Obviously there's some I know, right? One Art, if I recall, had an anthology series, or could be wrong, it may have been One Art, for work related poetry, job related poetry, right, and writing. And then I was searching again, and the first line had come up, and I went on their Duotrope listing and had come across a project called Blue Cubicle Press. So, Blue Cubicle Press is an independent publisher, so they publish two literary journals. One is The First Line, and then the second is Workers' Right. Chapbooks in their Overtime series and books they enjoy reading. They are dedicated to giving voice to writers who realize their words may never pay the mortgage, but who are too stubborn to stop trying. They're here to support the artist trapped in the daily grind. So yeah, you can see they have a number of projects, right? Here, the first line, the last line, literary journal, overtime, workers' right, literary journal. So again, another example of literary journals having multiple, publications or projects associated with them. You can start up different series with your Litmanger journal, and I really love how Duotrope, has all those linked and keeps track of which ones are active and helps with that, the Duotrope team. And yeah, another, press I covered just a couple episodes back, right? Flower Song Press. They have a couple different imprints, projects that they do, right? So another example. And I thought this was really cool, how they have, multiple publications going on here, not just one, right? So yeah, and they're based out of the US. So I'm going to go back here. So yeah, this is the first line, right? And yeah, we're going to check out the first line today because it caught my eyes. So yeah, I'm just going to head over to the first line's Chill Subs overview page for you guys, yeah? So if we scroll down here, right, we have the About section, and I'm going to just read this off for you guys as the intro. Quoting this again, the first line is a quarterly literary magazine based in Plano, Texas. I believe it's pronounced Plano, Texas. Founded in 1999 by David LaBounty, Robin LaBounty, and Jeff Adams. The magazine's unique concept involves each issue featuring short stories that all begin with the first. The magazine's unique concept involves each issue featuring short stories that all begin with the same first line, providing a creative challenge for writers and a diverse reading experience for audiences. Over the years, the first line has evolved from a small zine to a professionally bound publication, expanding its reach and impact in the literary community. The magazine accepts submissions in various genres, including fiction and poetry, with a focus on originality and adherence to the provided first line. Contributors are compensated upon publication with payment varying based on the type of work. The first line also offers back issues and subscriptions through its website, catering to a global readership. For more information, including submission guidelines and upcoming first lines, visit their official website at thefirstline.com. So yeah, it's been around a very long time, yeah. I'm 31 right now, so I'm about 4 years older than the first line. And yeah, so 27 years, right? Yeah, that's, close to 3 decades there, right? That's awesome. And yeah, so they've been around a very, very long time. They have industry rankings here, right? Fish list 219 out of 1,830. Again, there's an episode on industry rankings and the fish list on the series. So yeah, we have the masthead again. David LaBounty is the editor in chief, it looks like. And So the vibe is showing here, send us your best but less intimidating. Acceptance rate looks like the tracker stats for chill subs, those who reported it through the chill subs tracker, is showing 12.39%. So yeah, it's kind of tough. Ones that are under right 30%, under 10%, 1% even right, tough to get an acceptance from. They have print issues. There's no fee, and payment right varies. So it's showing $10 for poetry, 25 to 50 for fiction, and $25 for nonfiction. The editor reported data for response time is 35 days, and Chilsup's tracker stats as of February 2026 is showing 48 days, right, for reporting, getting a response back on the decision. And yeah, so it's showing new writer friendly, great editors, a damn good read, hidden gem, and yeah, I just love them. So those are the votes that were entered on Chillsub's overview page. Again, you can see my screen out on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and elsewhere. And eventually, Apple, I think, is introducing video too. So yeah, that's cool. So they have their calls here, and looks like they've been bookmarked 195 times to date. And yeah, so it looks like it's always open. We'll have to check the website. I know sometimes lit magazine journals have changed their, open windows and stuff. So yeah, always a good idea, regardless of what duotrope or chill sub states, right, to always verify that those are, the times or the spans they're open, right? If it says always open, just check the website, right? Yeah. So general, it says prose poetry, right? Appears, pay $10, no fee. They have themed calls, it looks like, right? And yeah, I'm seeing science fiction tags, horror. We'll have to check the site on this. 300 to 5,000 words. Pay range is $25 to $50. Again, no fee. Themed is showing, right? Nonfiction. And yeah, and we have flash journal memoir tags here. 500 to 800 words. Pay is $25. No fee, always open. So that's awesome. Yeah, love seeing places that have no fees, right? And yeah, and also paying writers for their work. So they're based again out of Plano, Texas. Haven't been to Plano, Texas. I have been to Texas actually myself, two times. Keller, Texas, and Dallas. I've been out to Dallas and the Fort Worth area. Yeah, in the past. Great barbecue. I'm a huge fan of anything with barbecue, and you know. Sorry, I know. I promised myself I'd stop talking about food on this podcast. Right, I made a promise. We still haven't covered any food focused lit mags or journals, guys. I'll have to see if I can fit it in before the end of March and April, that window, to get maybe one in. If not, then I'm sorry, but totally. We've had some lit magazine journals named after food or have food in their name a little bit. I've talked about them, I guess, which kind of counts. But yeah. So let's check out the First Line website. Yeah, let's get started here and dig into it. Yeah, you can see submissions due May 1st, 2026. Now, I really love this typewriter. It reminds me actually of the first typewriter I ever had. In our family, we had this typewriter, right? When I was very young back in Minnesota, it was a silver typewriter. It looks similar to this, not exactly, but very similar. The keys were different, and yeah, a bit different. And I can't remember the model, but I had this project with eighth grade. I think it was a class called digital imaging. Again, I mentioned this on the podcast. It was more so about photography and Photoshop and stuff. I haven't touched Photoshop in over nearly 2 decades or something like that, since eighth grade. But yeah, besides installing it for marketing departments and stuff when I was doing IT support. But yeah, so I had this photograph. I shared this in the poetry community. It's this photograph of me in like a black jacket with sitting at a typewriter with a little lamp, arched over the typewriter. And yeah, I had to, create a photographic scene. I was trying to give off Edgar Allan Poe vibes back then. If the room was all dark, I took that photo in our living room, family living room back in Minnesota. Moved the desk over this table we had and set up a chair and turned off all the lights, and then besides one, and then I made it a black and white photo, and it's pretty LOL. It was just be eerie, me sitting at a typewriter in the dark, So, anyways, yeah, it reminds me of that moment in my life. I share memory clips that lit mags remind me of, or things. So yeah, looks like so they have summer 2026 here. So this is a line they have here, right? So the summer between his slash her slash their junior and senior years, Alex worked as a server at Wharf Mountain. That's Wharf, WHARF Mountain. So here we can see if we scroll down on their main page, 2026 first lines. So yeah. Yeah, the one I just read, it says the due date is May 1st, 2026. Yeah, so you guys have time if you're interested in submitting to the first line, yeah. Fall, then they have it all planned out in advance. I think this is great. I really like seeing this, about a plan for, each first line, right? That's really cool. And I think also, having a prompt like this for others is pretty awesome. It gives them a challenge. I like lit mags that have prompt challenges and stuff. Back when I was joining, right, the Instagram poetry community, I mean, I started writing poetry, right, back in like sixth grade more so, right? But, prior to starting Dippity, back in 2022, I was diving back into the poetry community doing prompt challenges like this, others accounts, the community accounts, hub accounts, right? And they were pretty fun, those prompts, and the word choices you had to use, like a word of the day or word of the month or word of the week, and that was pretty interesting and fun. So yeah, so I shared the summer line, right? The fall first line is the line of people stretched all the way around the block, and the due date for that is August 1st, 2026. So fall, right, is showing the line of people stretched all the way around the block, and the due date for that one is August 1st, 2026. Then we have winter, right? On quoting this again, Lawrence was the last to arrive. The due date for that is November 1st, 2026. States here, remember, all stories must start with the appropriate first line and you cannot change it in any way unless otherwise indicated. And don't forget the 2026 last line. It was after midnight when we finally made it home. The due date for that one is October 1st, 2026. So yeah, that's awesome. They have the first lines planned out, right? And summer, fall, winter. Yeah, and then they have the last line, right, which is October 1st, 2026. So yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, if you guys are up for a challenge, this is pretty neat, first line, last line. I think it's pretty interesting, format for sure. And yeah, so on the right hand column here, they have what's new at the first line, right? February 2nd, back in a bit, they're reading for the spring issue. While waiting, check out their Patreon to learn what's coming to the press this year. And yeah, you can see that's under Blue Cubicle Press. So this year at Blue Cubicle Press, right, they've got some exciting things to announce for the press this year. And yeah, for their patrons, their paying patrons, they'll have several series of posts and goodies into 2026. And yeah, you also will help them pick their first lines for 2027 if you're part of it, right? And looks like it including a new book, two new zines, 9 new innings of bookstores and baseball, interviews with their authors, and discounts on their 6 week summer class. And it says those who are part of it, right, they'll help pick their first lines for 2027, and they have a free membership option, right? And yeah, so you can see here, right? Again, some lit magazine journals have some unique membership structures through Patreon. I've shared on this podcast, right? Seaside Gothic comes to my mind, and a few others. So the free one shows updates and free posts on the craft of writing, up to 3 entries in their 2027 first line, last line contest for October closing time. Yeah. Yeah. And then Sky is showing access to a new 9 month series, Bookstores and Baseball, starting in March, access to their new author interviews, up to 5 entries in their 2027 first line, last line contests. And yeah, the ability to vote on a fan favorite for their 2027 first line, last line contest. And Electric and Cyan is another tier, it looks like. Access to their 9 month series, Bookstores and Baseball, starting in March. Access to their new author interviews. 25% discount on A Fine Husband, released in March. Free PDF copies of 2 new zines coming in April and August. 10% discount on their 6 week writing class. More info to come in April. Up to 5 entries in their 2027 first line, last line contest. October is in parentheses there. Ability to vote on a fan favorite again, for the first line, last line contest for 2027. And then the last plan is showing Azure and Royal access to a new 9 month series, Bookstores and baseball starting in March, access to their new author interviews, free PDF or hard copy of A Fine Husband, free PDF or hard copies of their two new zines coming in April and August, 15% discount on their 6 week writing class, more info to come in April, up to 5 entries in their 2027 First Line Last Line contest, and the ability to vote on a fan favorite to their 2027 First Line Last Line contest. So, yeah, I just wanted to read that out because, it can be tough to think about things to create for like a membership structure, right? And I think Seaside Gothic was a good example, right? And having unlockable posts and things like that. It looks like Blue Cubicle Press here has come up with a lot of very creative, tiers for their membership and options, for others, to, be a part of the membership and get something out of it, right? You get exclusive access to author interviews, you get entries, right? I think that's a unique concept, right? Giving additional entries to the contest, right? Beyond just like the minimum, right? Up to 3 entries, right, is on the free plan. But if you're on a tier, right, the sky, right, is showing up to 5 entries, right? And yeah, and then Electric and Cyan, same thing, and Azure and Royal. So yeah, that's something to think about, in terms if you're going to start a Patreon, right? You want to have something, charted out for each membership tier and stick to that. Yeah. So we're going to click on this here, their membership homepage to take a look at it. Yeah. So yeah, this is again it all laid out here, right? Again, the tiers, right? So it looks like it's $3 a month for electric, right? Workers right and overtime, then $5 a month cyan, right? The first line and workers right. Azure advanced lit $7 a month. So that's not too bad. A lot of Substacks too are like that, we've seen a range of like $5 to $10 for Substack, paid subscriptions. And you could use a Substack, right? I shared only poems, not too long ago, right? They moved their membership, space over to Substack. Some use Patreon. It's really up to you what works for you and what you want to do. You could use both Substack and Patreon. No one's saying you can't. But it can be hard to manage multiple spaces, right? So you want to stick to something and be consistent with it. And yeah, so that's cool. So yeah, I read these off, but I'm just expanding it so you guys can see. So yeah, that's really cool. They have a lot of awesome projects that they do at Blue Cubicle Press, and that are part of it. So let's head back over to the website. You can see here the winter issues available, volume 27, issue 4. When anyone in town needed help, they contacted Rocky Germain. So yeah, print looks like it's $7, 7.50, $7.50. PDF is $3. So they have a print and PDF version, so that's great, yeah. So yeah, let's click on it. Let's see. I wonder what this looks like. So yeah, it just pops up and then you can purchase it, right? And yeah, so that's cool. And the PDF version's $3. That's not too bad, I think that's pretty cost friendly. It looks like, yeah, there's a delay maybe in receiving issues. They've mentioned some notes here. If you order after, from Patreon, right, it's immediately. And yeah, sometimes there are brief typos on the sites. It happens, when things come up, and yeah, that's totally okay. I caught typo the other day on my own website. I was like, how long again was that typo there, guys? I was like, why didn't anyone tell me? But yeah, sometimes you catch those things. But yeah, so a road well traveled, right? The fall issue is still available, and yeah, so again, they have, right, the contents of it, right, and each one, the year it's from, and the first and the favorite first lines, right, and then yeah, and yeah, so they have returning, right, and yeah, so they have a table of contents and the line right there. So that's cool, yeah. Yeah. They said they have a new episode of TFL on tape. I don't know what that is. Let's take a look. So So yeah, this is interesting. I looks like here, episode 63, efficiency leads to fulfillment. There's a reading of a story here. Oh, so that's cool. They do. It looks like audio is what I'm assuming. I won't click on that now because I'm in the recording, so it might be disruptive to it. But yeah, So TFL on tape, right? The first line on tape. So yeah, I think it's great to add an element of audio and some fun things there. That's pretty cool. And yeah, you can see again, right? They have Blue Cubicle Press always at the bottom of their pages, right? And yeah, so yeah, everything's hyperlinked on this right hand side column, the past volumes and subscriptions. They have subscription options for issues, it looks like, and for PDFs, right? So four is 25 bucks, four PDFs is $12. And they have publisher pairs t-shirts, right? So yeah, it looks like they have a merch shop too, which is fun, yeah. And yeah, so that's great. Yeah. So they're updating their policy, it looks like, for international hard copy subscriptions and individual issue orders. Let's take a look. So yeah, even though it costs even though it cost them a little more in shipping, for over 20 years they made sure if someone outside the US wanted to hold a copy of the first line they could. However, right, unfortunately, due to new tariffs and red tape, they can no longer afford to offer hard copy subscriptions to international readers, though they still can ship single copies, but they will have to determine cost and availability on a country by country basis. For instance, they can mail an issue to Canada, but the cost is now $30, right, to cover the postage and new fees. Wow, yeah. And if you live in Poland, for example, an issue will cost 20 bucks, right? However, because of Brexit, readers in the United Kingdom can no longer purchase hard copies at any price. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, again, a lot of lit mags have been impacted with rising costs and things like that. And it's affected the structure of like international shipping quite a bit, with recent events happening, right? With all of the stuff over that. And yeah, it's def tough. Um, yeah. So PDF versions typically, digital versions are easily accessible. So there are a lot of really great digital mobile reading platforms out there that, lit mags, maybe can leverage, and things like that. But yeah, I've covered a couple different, digital magazine app readers and stuff, but not all those platforms, they have to vet your publication to onboard you into some of those, for that. But it's always a good idea. Again, this is a prime example why it's always a good idea to make sure you offer PDF copies or ebook versions of the issues, right? And yeah, static PDFs aren't the best, again, so there are ways you can make it, a flowable, like flip book type, right? I covered in this podcast. The PDF episode was in the earlier parts of this podcast, right? And was one of the ones with a circle in the PDF, icon on it. And a couple other episodes, I talked about various platforms to create a more interactive experience with PDFs, right? Yeah, because scrolling to a PDF can be a little bit, but if it's a fairly short issue, it's not too bad, right? Yeah, so they have notes there, so that's great. And other pages of interest, right? Notes from a book festival, free stuff. Let's click on free stuff, guys. So yeah, it says they're giving away old, slightly mail damaged issues, so that's cool. Yeah, a read and release program, notes from a book festival. So yeah, it looks like they do attend festival events, I believe, right? And I do like reading about, these additional notes and, events that lit mags and journals go to, Who knows, you may come across something new and learn something from it, right? And it looks like it's talking about the cost to register for a table, right? I think it's showing 70 bucks, what they were stating, right? For this event they were going to. And yeah, notes from the 2014 Indie Book Festival at Manila Fest. And yeah, so this was a while back, but still, I think it's great. It shows you, right? I like learning about the cost of various table events. And some table events are, large events out there in existence are can be like, $1,000, several $100, But some local table events, in your area and stuff like that, maybe they're less than a couple $100 or maybe $100, for a table. It depends. Every event's different. Again, CLMP, the Community of Literary Magazines and Presses, has a bunch of events, on their public pages that you can follow and check out. So yeah, let's check out the submit section now. Yeah. So yeah, they state here this was last updated right November 2nd, 2025. So always a good thing to have, the date of when something was last updated or to keep things current. They love that writers around the world are inspired by their first lines, and they know that not every story will be sent to them. However, they ask that you do not submit stories starting with their first lines to other journals or post them online on public sites until they've notified you as to their decision, usually 4 weeks after the deadline. when the entire premise of the publication revolves around one sentence. They don't want it to look as if they stole. They don't want to. They don't want it to look as if they stole that sentence from another writer. And yeah, if you have questions, right, drop them a line. And they also understand that writers may add their first line to a story they currently are working on or have already completed, and that's cool. But it says, please do not add their first line to a previously published story and submit it to them. They do not accept previously published stories, even if they have been repurposed for their first lines. And just to be clear, they do not accept simultaneous submissions. So yeah, again, the AI policies typically can be found on Duotrope. Not all lit magazine journals have it plugged in there. Some do specify on their website, totally. So again, human created work only. No AI use is permitted, right? Not at all. And yeah, so they state here, right, it has to be original work, not generated or co-written by artificial intelligence. They use several AI detectors, but they know they are not perfect. Yeah. Submissions found to be AI generated will be disqualified from consideration. And then, of course, lit mags, if they ever discover, right, something was AI generated, right, they pull it down, obviously, right? Yeah, and one more thing, it states here, writers compete against one another for magazine space. So technically, every literary magazine is running a contest. There are, however, literary magazines that run traditional contests where they charge entry fees and rank the winners. They do not, nor will they ever, right, charge a submission fee, nor do they rank their stories in nor do they rank stories in order of importance. Occasionally, they run contests to help come up with new first lines, or they run fun, gimmicky competitions for free stuff, but the actual journal is not a contest in the traditional sense. Fiction, so all stories must be written with the first line provided. The line cannot be altered in any way unless otherwise noted by the editors. The story should be between 300 and 5,000 words. This is more like a guideline and not a hard and fast rule. Going over or under the word count won't get your story tossed from the slush pile. The sentences can be found on the homepage of the First Line's website as well as the prior issue. Note they are open to all genres. They try to make TFL as eclectic as possible. Poetry. They do accept poetry, though rarely. They have no restrictions on form or line count, but all poems must begin with the first line provided. The line cannot be altered in any way. Nonfiction. 500 to 800 word critical essays about your favorite first line from a literary work. Oh, that's cool, yeah. And then all submissions. So writers should include a 2 to 3 sentence biography themselves that they can use in the journal should your story, poem, or essay be accepted. Multiple submissions. So they don't mind if you want to submit multiple submissions for the same issue. However, it is unlikely they will use more than one of your stories or poems in the same issue. 4-part stories. So if you think you are up to the challenge, you can write a 4-part story that uses the spring, summer, fall, and winter sentences. 5 parts if you are brave enough to include a 5th story that ends with the last line. However, all parts must be submitted at once, a single email or snail mail before the February 1st deadline. If selected, each part will be published in its respective issue. So yeah, this one, 4-part stories, it looks like had, this was last updated, right, November 2nd, 2025. So I would stick to what's on their homepage here, right, the 2026 first lines. But yeah, it looks like they have this one, 4-part stories has a different deadline, right? And yeah, so 4-part stories, right? That was February 1st, 2026, right? The deadline for that. So yeah, submissions, right, are intaked via email. So submissions are they do everything through email. Again, I've covered in this podcast, right, and the series we talked about, submission management systems, some low cost ones, and alternatives to that, but again, totally, some lit magazine journalists have gone, decades even or several years without a submission management system. It's not absolutely necessary, but it can, make organization much easier, right? And intaking everything. And yeah, and filtering and tagging things so you stay organized, and it can maybe increase your response time, right? If you can easily find things, not sifting through emails, right? But again, they've been around since 1999, so I think they've, from what I can tell, they've been doing a very great job. Their call structure uh are very unique. I really like the first line prompts and the last line that they have going on here. It's a lot of fun too, absolutely. Yeah. Now, have I submitted to now I may have actually. I'm thinking back. This may not be the first time I'm on the firstline.com. It may have been a while back. I tried to tackle one of their prompts or checked it out. I can't remember if I actually went through with it or not. I can't remember. because it's through email, so I don't remember. But anyways, I remember I did, I think, stumble across them maybe a year ago, or within the past 12-24 months for sure. And I was like, oh, that prompt sounds really cool. If I have time, I'll totally try and enter it and see. So I don't remember, but anyways, I this isn't the first time I'm on their site. This is the first time I'm like digging through a lot more on their site though, for sure. Yeah, so they have spring, right? This is the submission schedule, right? So yeah, I think this is for 4-part stories, right? Yeah. And yeah, so they have this mission scheduled for 2026, right? So this one passed already, right? February 1st, 2026, but it was, I flipped through the notebook and found half finished poems, some drawings, and blank, fill in the blank. So that one is over that submission deadline. That's a fun one for sure. And then summer, right? So the summer between his slash her slash their junior and senior years, again, Alex. So yeah, summer, fall, and winter. I read these already, so I won't reread those. But again, you can see it on my screen too, right? And notification, right? So they don't make decisions about submissions until after each issue closes, and they typically send notices 4 to 5 weeks after the issue's deadline to everyone who submitted. You can also check the website's homepage for each issue's production status. And yeah, so they're very specific there, on the window to expect a decision. That's great. They pay on publication again, 25 to $50 for fiction, $10 for poetry, and $25 for nonfiction, all US dollars. They also send a copy of the issue to you in which your piece appears. You'll receive your money and issue at the same time. Yeah. And typically, right? Yeah. And yeah, that's awesome. So note to their international writers, right? Postage costs for sending author copies overseas is a little high, right? So they are reducing international author payment by the amount it would cost to send one author copy overseas. However, if you would like to receive an electronic version of the issue PDF instead of a hard copy, author payment will not change. So that's great that they do that and accommodate international writers the best they can with the rising crazy high cost, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. I was like trying to set up something. I was testing something for international one time. I was like, this is way too high. So I went through another I did compare prices, right? Different printing platforms and stuff. I was like, yeah, this is a little bit more reasonable and possible. Something, it's hard, sometimes you have to cover, some editors are covering, additional costs, out of pocket themselves sometimes too, all of that, right? So it's pretty tough. So yeah, the last line is here, right? So I just was reading the first lines earlier, right? So the last line, if you're interested in submitting to the last line, the literary journal where they all end the same. So we can see here, right, the due date's October 1st, 2026, right? The last line is showing it was after midnight when we finally made it home. Yeah, so I think again this year portion here may not be current. That just this one part above it, right? Yeah, and then it says visit the last line for more information. So yeah, then they have this other page, the lastlinejournal.com. Now, while I'm, maybe covering the first line, right? Just keep in mind there's also the last line, right? That's awesome. So I like that they have two sides. And I love this computer, right? And then it was after midnight when we finally made it home. It has that line in it, right? The last line. Submissions due October 1st, 2026. So yeah, they are update. Their site is updated. I think just one or two things I saw that maybe weren't reflective of the current call. But yeah, so yeah, just one or two things I pointed out, right? So yeah, um, then they have, right, the column, right, and some plugged in issues, right? So definitely helps to pick up and buy issues. They're not too bad, right? It's showing for the last line, right? Print is typically $4 to $5, right? PDF is $2, right? That's not too bad, to check out the issues to get a sense and feel for them, right? And yeah, so yeah, again, it covers, right, the last line, right, guidelines here, right, fiction. All stories must end with the last line provided. The line cannot be altered in any way unless otherwise noted by editors. The story should be between 300 and 5,000 words. This is more like a guideline and not a hard, fast rule again. And yeah, going over under the word count won't get your story tossed from the slush pile. So yeah, I think it says here, yeah, writers may add their last line to a story that they're currently working on or have already completed. And yeah, so again, the submission guidelines are here. I won't recover this predominantly requirements here, right? And yeah, it's basically quite similar to the other one, right? Again, no AI or anything like that, right? And yeah, payment for this, right? On publication, right? $20 to $40 for fiction, all US dollars, right? And the same thing, they send, an issue to you, right? And payment and all of that, yeah. So yeah, you can see here it says 2026, the last line is. So yeah, that was just a typo, for it was showing 2024 earlier. Yeah. And then yeah, so again, you can actually, they have a post office box, it looks like. So email or post office box. I think most writers just do email, or if a submission management system's available, right? Either or. Yeah, but everything they intake, right, is through email for the first line and the last line. And yeah, so again, they said a 2 to 3 sentence bio, right? They mention about, multiple submissions, but you know, um, yeah, if you want to submit multiple stories for the same issue, it is unlikely they'll use more than one of your stories in the same issue. And yeah, it says they do not accept previously published stories again, even if they've been repurposed for their last lines, and they do not accept simultaneous submissions, right? So yeah, just a reminder about that again. And yeah, um, so yeah, and yeah, then it states when the issue is published and printed, and yeah, and subscribers receiving a copy and stuff. Yeah, so that's cool. So yeah, that's the last line journal.com. And yeah, since I'm covering the first line and the last line, right, might as well just cover them together. And Blue Cubicle Press, it's all bundled up. So I will name this episode the first line, literary journal, because predominantly I'm covering that. And technically I could call it Blue Cubicle Press episode 2, but yeah, more so focusing on the first line in this episode, and just giving a tour of their website. Yeah, so we covered that. They have a bookstore section here. So that's great. They actually have some physical locations that they're in. You can find the first line here, right, at these bookstores, right? That's awesome. So we have Arcata, California, right? Chicago, Illinois. Um, yeah, Baltimore, Maryland, and yeah. Oh, they're Reno, Nevada, the Radical Cat. That's cool. I'm in Nevada, so I thought that was cool. Yeah, and yeah, Seattle, Washington, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Some fun bookstore names for sure. Lion's Tooth, right? And yeah, the Radical Cat's in Reno, Nevada. I haven't been there. Let's see. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the Radical Cat, Reno, Nevada. So here in the Las Vegas, Nevada area, the most one well known bookstore would be the Writer's Block. That one. Yeah, and then there are a couple other smaller ones that have popped up. One got closed down, if I recall. And yeah, and then there's some smaller local ones too, in my area. And yeah, so that's cool, right? The Atomic Books, and um yeah, so they're in a lot of physical locations and even libraries, right? They're registered with EBSCO, right? And yeah, so they're in the Austin Public Library, Texas, and the UNC Chapel Hill Library, North Carolina. And yeah, so again, it goes to show you can, as a lit magazine journal, get into physical locations. It's tough. It's not easy for lit magazine journals, right? Sometimes you have to do a lot of, not door to door, but I'm saying, like, you have to call, maybe inquire. I had, emailed and called various places, and things of that nature to try myself. But, not, I don't know if any place has ever picked up our, lit mag in physical shops. I saw Ingram Network orders, but I don't know. So predominantly we're in some digital spaces, and things like that. But yeah, it is possible to get into physical locations, though it is hard work to try and get in, though. Typically, you should start locally, right where you're based, and branch out, right. So you can see they are in the Austin, Texas, book people, and yeah, so yeah, and they have an about section. So yeah, they have their mission statement, right, again, right, and yeah, the purpose of the first line is to jumpstart the imagination again, right? To help writers break through the block that is the blank page. Each issue, again, contains stories that stem from a common first line. It also provides a forum for discussing favorite lines in literature, right? And the first line is an exercise in creativity for writers and a chance for readers to see how many different directions, we can take when we start from the same place. Yeah, so that's really cool. So they're published 4 times a year, right? So it says starting in 20. So yeah, it says published 4 times a year here. And, starting in 2002, from 1999 through 2001, they published 6 times a year. Their first issue was May/June 1999. 15th issue, 12.2 summer to 2010, and their 75th issue, 18.3 fall 2016, and their 100th issue, 24.4 winter 2022, right? Cost is showing was $6 an issue, $25 a year. Their subscription information, right, is here, right? So they have Kindle subscriptions. Yeah, not too bad. Really low cost, right? PDF, right? Subscriptions. And yeah, you can also do a bundle of a year, $25, 2 years, right, to $40. And $1, $2, a couple dollars, subscriptions, not too bad. I think that's great. So yeah, it looks like they email Kindle files to their readers, right? So there are a couple different ways you could go about doing this, right? For sure, there are a lot of different platforms and tools out there. um yeah, some lit magazine journals out there have little kiosk shops, or where others can unlock issues and things too. I've seen, or some I've covered in this podcast, right, have their own mobile app, but that can be quite costly to do so. So this is something that, a subscription setup like this, digital subscriptions, typically PDFs, and emailing those out, it's fairly inexpensive. I showed you on this podcast, right? Vevna Forrow Literary Magazine, a couple others, right? The episode, if you look it up. Yeah, they have Ko-fi shops, right? Ko-fi shops where others can access the issues, right? As well. Ko-fi shops, or quite a few lit magazine journals use them too. Ko-fi, right? So yeah, that's the first line. I think again they have a very cool structure. I really like, again, the whole prompt challenge and that aspect of being creative and seeing how other writers approach like the same first line, right? And then they also have, right, aside from the first line literary journal, they also have the last line, right? So yeah, I think it's a fun challenge, totally. I feel just like reading those, of like I'm thinking of like ideas just as I'm reading it, of like how I would go about, like which direction I would take, you know, uh, the writing and the story, or even they do accept poems, right? They do have poems, but very not as much, right? They're mostly focusing here, on stories, right? It appears. So if you are someone who loves writing stories, or even if you write poems, right? They're not opposed to poems at all. But if you're someone who likes challenges, right, then go for it, right? You have time. They have their coming windows here, right? Summer, fall, winter. So get going, guys. These prompts are pretty fun. So maybe something for you to try for sure. Yeah, so that's the first line. That's pretty much it. They do have a Wikipedia page, by the way, aside from, Duotrope and the Chill Subs overview page. Now, I just like reading these Wikipedia pages sometimes, right? So the first line, right, they have their ISSN number. If you don't know how to go about getting an ISSN number, I talk about on the podcast a little bit my experience, and yeah, and I talk about the difference between that and the ISBN, right? So again, right, has their founding date, everything here. Now this history portion was cool to me. I'm just gonna read it off for you guys real quick. Not quick. I mean, the episode's nearing, past 40 minutes now, but that's okay. So when the first line debuted, the magazine was 6 to 8 sheets of 8.5 inch by 14-inch paper, folded in half and stapled with a color cover. The 6 times a year publication accepted stories that were no longer than one page, about 600 words. Also, typical issues were 20 pages and carried 14 to 16 stories. The first line paid its contributors for 2 issues back then, right? In 2002, the magazine grew up. It became more standard, 8 and 1/4 by 5.5 size, and Perfect Bound. Published quarterly, it averages 64 pages an issue. The logo was also changed, right? As were the cover, classic typewriter, and submission word count became up to 3,000 words. It also instituted a pay scale for contributors, right? So yeah, that's when they started the pay scale, it looks like. And then 2003, David debuted a new press, Blue Cubicle Press, right, and released their first anthology, The Best of the First Line, the First 3 Years, a collection of favorite stories published during the zine years. In 2006, Jeff left the first line to concentrate on his writing and other adventures, And in 2008, Blue Cubicle Press released the second TFL anthology to commemorate Jeff's departure, the best of the first line editors picks 2002 to 2006. So that's great. I like that they did an editor's pick series. I was thinking about doing that something for my own lit mag, like editor's picks of all our online publications, because we want to put more and more of those in print, right? I think that's a really cool thing. And yeah, sometimes team structures change and things happen like that. It's bound to happen. I've seen that happen with quite a few lit mags over the years. But yeah, you can do some fun anthologies, different series. Again, just goes to show you, right, if you're lit mag journal. And again, they reiterate what their mission and purpose is right here again, which I read on their site. And yeah, it says, right, most of the first lines are created by the editors. Every 2 or 3 years, TFL holds a contest where readers submit possible first lines, and a few are chosen for publication. Although a majority of the authors are from the United States, TFL has published authors from India, South Africa, Egypt, Denmark, Estonia, and Australia, as well as Canada and the UK, just to name a few. So, yeah, international submissions. That's great. Very cool. Yeah, so I really think the first line is pretty cool. Yeah, I really like prompt challenges and stuff. Again, back when I was joining, right, the first time I joined, right, the Instagram poetry community, right, prior to starting up Dippity, right, I was really getting into challenges like this. Again, where they give you like a word of the day, or even a lot of poets in the community create these, monthly challenge prompts like calendars, for this day, write about this, or use this word in your poem or in your story, right? I really like seeing challenges like this. It gets your gears turning and you can have a lot of fun with it, right? I think that's a lot of fun. There was this thing back in school, middle school, one time. We had this challenge, right? We all read the same book, and was it this? Yeah, I think it was it. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. No, it may have been something. It was maybe something similar to that. But anyways, we all read the same book, right? And then we had this page, right, where one classmate would write a line, right? And then the next student would write the next line and continue it. You had like a cap of like a couple, a certain cap of number of lines you had to do. And then, each everyone would finish it. And it was like our homework assignment. We'd have to contribute we'd have to contribute more than once to it, over the course of, I think it was several weeks, if I recall, and see how the story developed, towards the end and to see how the story developed, over time with everyone's different lines. So it sort of reminds me of that in a sense, but the first line is again, just focusing on the first line, and then they also have the last line, right? But just an example, right? There was fun activities like that. I participate in things like that way back in middle school days. I always had a lot of fun. I remember I made some classmates laugh with how I, added some lines in there, and, it was pretty LOL, I can't remember if like there was like a dude on a beach in sandals and, or something, or yeah, I may have written something like that for that challenge back in school where we had this community board, and we were all posting on the page, what's happening next on the story. It would be like active, and we all check like where's the story developing. That was a lot of fun too. I don't know if any lit mags do anything like that, but yeah, the first line is pretty close to that, I guess, starting with the first line with what they have here, right? And then the last line, right? So totally, check out the call here, guys, and see if you like things like this. And yeah, this is totally a lot of fun. So totally give it a try. It's gonna be a challenge, for you as a writer. If you've never written stories before, totally give it a try. They do again, accept poems too. So it's not like that's the only thing they focus on, but more predominantly stories. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, I really think the first line's pretty cool. I love the typewriter here and how they have, submissions and everything, and set up the line here. So I think a Facebook page. I couldn't find, unless I missed it. They may have other social media pages, but they have a Facebook page, for the first line, it looks like. But yeah, they predominantly update their website, and the calls, right? The chill subs page, right, is up to date, and yeah, and then Duotrope, obviously, right, the team at Duotrope ensures these are updated, right? And you can see, right, the calls again on Duotrope, right? And yeah, you can see rolling deadlines, right, here. And yeah, so that's cool, right? um yeah, Normal response speed, right, for magazines. The overall acceptance rate is lower than most magazines, yeah. And overall rate of non-response is lower than most magazines. So they're more responsive. That's great. Yeah, so I think yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's a very cool print publication. Now my one comment would be I think it'd be nice if they had maybe a few more freebies, to see past examples of work and things like that. Yeah, beyond the PDF and print options, right, for others to purchase. Yeah, unless I missed it somewhere. But yeah, that's my only comment. And I think when you ever have like hundreds of issues, it's nice to maybe search through, have a search for them, or all of them laid out, maybe in rows. Just a comment, but everything's straightforward, easy to find. I didn't have any difficulties. I got the gist of their guidelines and their calls, and you can tell that they do update their pages and are active, right? So yeah, they've been around quite some time. So I think they do a great job. I think it's a lot of fun what they do with the first line and the last line, right? So I'll call this episode the first line literary journal, but just know that, the last line also exists, right? And then also Blue Cubicle Press exists as well. So yeah, check them out. And yeah, I'll plug in links at the bottom of this episode description. And yeah, some open calls for you. So yeah, again, they're currently open. They have upcoming windows. So yeah, totally. It's a lot of fun to partake. I'm not sure if they have like a thing. I didn't see anything about that. Like when you try again, after receiving a decision from them, I don't see any wait time or anything like that. Some lit magazine journals, mention, the rights, first year rights or not, things like that. As we saw in the past episode. Obviously, right, most lit magazine journals, most, not all, but you retain rights to your work, and things like that, right? First year rights are pretty common. First North American series rights are pretty common. But yeah, I think it's awesome. They do, intake international submissions, right? And yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. They have a contact section, right? And yeah, so it's clear, who their masthead is and everything. So that's all I can think of. So I haven't picked up issues or anything like that, but it's a couple dollars. So I will circle back sometime to read more of the first line and the other issues, right? And other they've done other products, anthologies, and series too, which are really cool. So take care, guys, and yeah, I'm gonna sign off for this episode. Check out the first line literary journal.